Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack. Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host, David Allen Lucas, author of various crazy stuff, president of St. Louis Writers Guild, and your editor and producer of this show. And with me today is
Lee Savage, author of erotic romance, and under the pen name Carrie Lee Williams, children's books. And I have a few announcements. I recently had 2 poems published in Pennant Magazine.
Hooray.
The January and February 2016 edition. You can buy the single edition on Amazon.com. And the treat is they are not my dark poetry. So it's a rare thing to have my light poetry. Also, I'd like to announce that if you buy a copy of that, you can be sure to bring it to the St. Louis Indie Convention to get it autographed. And that's going to be at 103 Olive Street at the Main Branch Library. It is a free event, and it will be...
She's got to check. She wrote it down, and her handwriting...
May 7th,
there we go.
From 10 to 5 p.m. And then there's a couple online things on Facebook. You can friend me and find out about the Juicy Taste of Erotica, where you can get a free sampler of my book. March 13th, I'll be online, 9:30 Central, with some games and fun activities. And then I am officially part of the Damn That's Hot Erotica 5, which will be taking place April 6th through the 15th online. I will have 2 one-hour spots, one on March 13th at 9:30 Central, and the other on... April 9th at 7 p.m. Central and April 14th at 10 p.m. Central. So just friend me on Facebook and you can find out all the deets. It's private events, so you do have to get an invite.
Okay, then.
I was like, I know, I'm glad I went first.
My name's Jennifer Stolzer. I'm an author and children's book illustrator. I draw other stuff, too. I have a website.
She doesn't draw much stuff we draw.
It's JenniferStolzer.com. You can go there.
And if you were at the next person's presentation at St. Louis Science Center, you would have gotten to see Jennifer's work blown up on the big OmniMax.
No one was more excited than I was.
No, good.
Awesome.
I don't know. There's a picture of this next guy out on Facebook looking up at the Sparrowhawk.
Yes,
and I mean, even though his back is to the camera, you can see by his hands and by his body's position the total rapture of looking at that thing.
My favorite is still the one I took, in which you're so small I have to blow you up to see the little flesh-colored pixels at the bottom, because I was in the back row of the bleachers. I like that very much because I'm like, and then there's Brad. They're like, where's Brad? And then I go, and then you appear as a little face and a hand holding a microphone.
Yes.
Yes. Tell them what this is all about.
Yes.
Nobody is going to understand it from this conversation.
Let's start with, I am Brad R. Cook, and yes, this weekend I was at the St. Louis Science Center.
Weeks ago?
Yes, which was several weeks ago when you hear this. But I was at the St. Louis Science Center, their first Friday's event, which was Steampunk Science for this month. Next month, it'll be Fun and Games, I think
April's
they said.
Fun and Games, yeah.
But each month they do something new. This month was steampunk, and it was exciting, and I gave a talk in the OmniMax Theater, which was over capacity, which was fun. 300 plus people in a room.
All right.
In that lovely stadium seating where you can't see anybody past like the 5th row. Which is daunting to say the least. And then my presentation, as we've been kind of throwing around, was probably about 20 feet tall. So the Sparrowhawk was actually bigger than I was, and you can see that in that picture, which was kind of fun.
By many times.
Yes. Almost life-size, almost. It was kind of fun.
I don't think it was quite that.
No, life-size would have filled up the room.
He would know better than anyone.
Life-size would have filled up the room.
I helped it was flat.
Yes. But it was quite large. The largest I'll probably ever see it, and it was awesome.
The expression on his face was like, kid, candy shop, locked in.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those, you've dreamt it for years. A wonderful illustrator brings it to life, and you're like, oh. And then you see it like 20 feet tall, and it's like, wow. Okay. But yes, I did, so it was Inventions of Fantasy, the real science of steampunk, and I talked all about the evolution of steam, the evolution of trains, the evolution of airships, and then kick-butt Victorian inventions.
Like the
they're
velocipede.
fun. The velocipede. Yes.
Which sounds like a dinosaur.
The velocicycle. Ah, wonderful things.
And foot bikes.
Yes, and foot bikes, which are road skates. Look them up; they're fun. But anyway, you can find Iron Horseman and Iron Zulu all over the place. If you're in St. Louis, check them out at Main Street Books, where you can find a signed copy at any time. And many, many thanks to everyone who came out, to everyone who stood in line, and to the St. Louis Science Center for having me.
Okay.
Hooray!
Thank you.
And I'm Fedora Amos. I write Victorian whodunits like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis, and recently out Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West. You can see me if you'll come down to the Carondelet Library. That's a branch of the St. Louis Public Library, 11 o'clock, April 9th. And you'll get some interesting stuff, and I think we're going to play Who's That Sleuth?
Now, will you have copies of your book there?
I will.
She finally arrived, right?
Yeah, going to her, launch party, no books. Yeah.
Well,
But it was
they
fun.
had not hit my front porch yet, but I have them now.
Yeah. I'm Melanie Colaney, author of science fiction, fantasy, and nonfiction.
And with that today, our topic is going to be books versus film adaptions. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And when we talk about books, we're not just going to limit ourselves to the literary version. We are going to let ourselves expand, of course, into comic books and comic book novels. But we are covering it all. Not just what you see on the big screen at the local AMC or whatever theater you go to, but also on the little screen known as the TV, or nowadays, if you're like me, a cable cutter on your computer monitor.
Cable cutter sounds like a federal offense.
Yeah, I guess that's probably why they call it that way. Before we get started, I want to start off with the good, because there are some good adaptions.
Uh-huh.
And there's a recent article in the Telegraph over in England that's online. I'm going to read a couple of them later that say these are the best ones that have been adapted for television. I think they missed one, and I'm going to talk about it briefly, and then I'm going to turn this over to
The rest of us.
Rest of you guys. And if you've listened to the Right Pack before, you're not going to be surprised when I announce the name of this: The Winds of War and War and Remembrance. Yes, I read the books after the miniseries came out. The miniseries got me interested to read the books, and I think it followed the book really well. But the reason why I want to throw this one out, it is considered to be the first miniseries on television, and first full novel on television with the whole entire series. Let you two fight.
Well, hopefully I won't steal yours.
You won't. Mine's
Okay.
a joke.
Okay. Well, I would just throw out that one of my favorites is The Princess Bride.
Oh, yes.
Which does leave out a few favorite scenes, like the zoo. However, it
Which
is
zoo?
in the book.
Yeah, I know, but
there's
what-
levels. The levels.
Oh, right,
The
that
Pit of
one.
Despair.
Okay, yes.
Anyway, so there are things that do get left out of the book, and there's a bit of the William Goldman's humor that is left out as well. But it's so much is there that it's a truly wonderful adaptation of the book.
And they included the scene in the movie that he left out of the book, and there was this big aside asking you to write to his publisher to get the scene. Yeah.
I'm going to take the easy answer. My favorite book-to-screen adaptation is easily The Lord of the Rings.
Ah, yes.
It has its flaws, but they're for the sake of screen enjoyment. And there's not nearly as many lectures about trees in the screen version. So in that way, I feel like they made some proper decisions. Also, there's no Tom Bombadil, and I will stand behind that to the end of my days. I hated him so much. I loved hearing the story of how Tom Bombadil came to be. Tom Bombadil was a little figurine that J.R.R. Tolkien gave to his son Christopher, and he hated him so much he tried to flush him down the toilet. But Tolkien rescued him and kept him in his office and wrote him into his epic, and Christopher and I are of the same mind.
There you go. I will say credit to Peter Jackson, too, for taking the good parts of the Silmarillion and throwing them into the book.
One of the things that you talked about was that you had to cut things, and that is certainly obvious because it goes down to 120 or 110 pages from
Right.
however many it was to begin with. So a lot has to be cut. And unfortunately, many times what has to be cut is the heart, the guts, and not the bones, because they're going to be there. The plot will be there, and oftentimes that's the only thing that's there.
And before I turn it off, just remember one thing. This should be obvious, but I'm going to point it out. Books versus television and movies, and if you ever listen to radio dramas or radio podcasts, they're all different media. The story has to be told differently. Books is nice words. Movies are completely visual.
I want to say one of my favorites is the True Blood series. I know they took out some of the humor that Charlene Harris has in the books, made it a little bit more edgy and dark. But overall, I think they did it justice. And I will say I have not read the complete series, so I don't know how it compares. She ends it in the books compared to how they ended it with the series.
I
but
hear they varied a little bit, but I don't know either.
yeah, I haven't gotten that far.
We're
you know,
being
life
vague enough,
is in
no
the way.
spoilers.
And thank you, because I
but-
haven't been able to watch the last 2 seasons yet.
I have watched it. I have not got to read it. I don't have time to read as much as
That's
I
because
used
you're
to.
in school, too.
Yes.
Well, as Fedora said, cutting is definitely a part of it.
Yes.
I think this is why short stories get snaked up and turned into movies so often,
And
too.
often make better ones, like
Yeah.
Stand By Me
Exactly.
is my favorite Stephen King.
Exactly. But to that end, one of the things that William Goldman wrote that got cut out of The Princess Bride are the scenes that William Goldman mentions in the book got cut out of the book, which I love. And had they incorporated it, it probably would have been weird. Here's the part we cut out of the movie, so that it would be good for timing. But as I love, there's like a cut from the book that says that there has been removed the last 5 pages, which was all about hats. So I love that.
All about hats?
All about hats.
Oh, that's awful.
Yes, Buttercup and her hats.
No, it wasn't Buttercup.
It wasn't Buttercup,
It
it was,
was the first fiance.
Yes.
One of you two, let you fight.
I think The Princess Bride, if we wanted to take a moment to just sort of analyze the concept of adaptation within one medium, or one title, that's a better word for it.
Go for it.
Just real brief. I think it's great how, like, the translation of the book, the sort of framing device of the book was it was a man who was retelling a story he'd already told it better. So he took this
No,
this
tell
tale.
them the full title. The Princess Bride, the Good Parts version.
Yes. So that's kind of the gimmick there.
Yes.
And because watching a man read a story is not very good, cinema. Instead, they decided to frame it as a story being told to a young boy, being truncated in that way. So you still had that sort of feeling of, I read it, but it's, I'm changing it as I'm reading it to appeal to my audience. The same thing is translated, only in a very different way, and
Not
with Peter
that different.
Falk.
One of my favorites is The Maltese Falcon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is an excellent book, and while cut quite a lot for the movie, it did a masterful job, not just in what they said, but in the pacing of it, which is something that a lot of people miss when they're trying to go from book to a different medium. And The Maltese Falcon was one of the things that I think the pacing really worked.
Oh, yeah. An excellent example. I would also throw out, and we're going to touch on many Michael Crichton books here. So I'm going to touch on a couple, and we're going to stick and probably bring up Jurassic Park in a bit. However, I'm going to start with Eaters of the Dead, which we all know as The 13th Warrior, which is a beautiful adaptation from book to movie, with some changes and some things like that, but really kind of keeping the heart of the story, which was very kind of cool. And then I would also throw in there Andromeda Strain, which is one of his older books and older movies, that the movie does not as, does not flow as well as the book, I think. There's some definite changes that happened and stuff like that. But yet again, I think it goes to show partly the way that Michael Crichton writes. That he almost writes in this kind of cinematic style, because so many of his books, and perhaps even a television show, translated so well from his writings into a visual medium.
Very much so. Jen?
Are we still talking about like good examples or?
Yep, I've got two. I'm
You got
saying.
good. Okay, you go ahead. I was gonna.
You guys.
propose-
Oh,
He wants
here.
to talk about bad stuff.
Here, I'll
okay, can
I'll
I
get you
go?
another good example if you
Can
want to.
I?
Yeah.
I thought
Two
you were
good
saving good
examples.
examples for last.
No,
Oh.
we've been talking good examples.
Okay. No, I thought you were saving your good examples for the last of the
No,
good
I was just letting her go
examples.
first.
Ah, okay.
Okay. Okay. Really quick.
Wow.
Two quick examples. One, like Fedora, I'm gonna go with an oldie. The 39 steps. I was almost said the wrong number.
Very different.
Yeah,
Not
I
the
got
42
I got kicked off.
Not
I
the
got
12
kicked.
steps.
The 12
I got
steps.
kicked
That's
off
what I was
the rails there. Anyway, 39 Steps I thought was a really great adaptation of the book. If you've never seen the movie, especially the one Hitchcock directed, I recommend it. Also, too, if your local theater ever puts it on, it is, at least the ones I've seen, have been fun to watch. Another one. Now, this does not follow the story perfectly. It's not meant to. This is a TV series over in Britain that has rewritten the story and brought it up to date, and has, in my opinion, followed it extremely closely considering what they're having to do with it. And that is Sherlock. Mm-hmm. Sherlock has taken the heart, the soul, and the guts of Conan Doyle's short stories and his novels of Sherlock Holmes and have modernized it to make it more enjoyable for yet a new audience. Okay, you.
Okay. Well, speaking of Sherlock Holmes, that's one that's been adapted a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we haven't talked about Shakespeare yet. He might have probably been more, but it's interesting how different the Sherlock Holmes are, where the story is almost always the same. The plot is the same, but what changes so much is the characterization.
Well, jumping onto the Sherlock real quick here.
Yeah.
The Hound of the Baskervilles, probably one of my favorite tales. It's been made into 6 or 7
At
movies,
least.
maybe more.
Yeah. And that's not even counting radio dramas.
And they are dubious at best. Because some of them are great adaptations of the story of the Hound of the Baskervilles. And then some of them threw in Nazis and weird stuff like that made no sense. And weird, like, German spy type things that were coming in. And I just didn't understand it.
Well, that was because of the time when it was done.
Yes,
Yes.
During
this is
World War
true.
II.
This is very
come on.
true.
You'd want to be against the Nazis.
And
if
yes,
we're
I
British
guess they
in
were
World
making
War
a
II.
contemporary
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes from
They
the
were.
40s. But yeah, so that's actually a great example of sometimes where it's done extraordinarily well. And I would actually love to see them go back and do some of the classic stories, Conan Doyle wrote today. Because, as much as I love Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law, Conan Doyle didn't write that.
That was terrible.
Well, I'm going to toss this out to you.
Well, it's got good steampunk in it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to toss
give
this
you
out
that.
to you on with Sherlock Holmes. The same group that, since you talked about 40s, this has got to be the same duo who did Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. They had 2 versions going. They had the movie. The movies were modern day, as Brad was talking about. They also had the radio drama, which was because of that setting, they could allow it to go back to the original time period. And that was Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce.
Yeah, those are not the people who made the bad one.
Oh, good.
No. If you really want to catch an interesting one, check out Christopher Lee.
Ah, okay.
Well, a different genre completely is the Joy Luck Club. And
Yeah.
I both read the book and saw the movie. I actually liked the movie better. And there were some things that they changed that were... Again, they changed it because it worked better for a movie. But that one is quite difficult. I know a lot of people sitting around this table probably don't like the genre, so you probably won't like the movie if you don't like the genre. But they were, I think it was 4 separate stories or 8, because it was the older generation than the younger generation. So given the time period, I mean, yes, it would kind of go slow, especially for compared to today's movies, but they did a good job telling the story, I thought.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the goods. Let's talk about the next part, the bads.
Well,
Or
I
you
wanted,
ready for that?
before we go into, like,
Okay,
this
okay.
is just a bad and just doing a big ream, like, reading our hit list on the bad adapted movies that we
And guys, I
love
don't
to
want you to do
hate.
hate list. Just tell us why. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, before we jump into that, I think we should discuss bad adaptations and how we felt they sort of broke. An example I wanted to bring up, I know we don't want to venture too far into comic books, but real quick, everyone knows Batman. Batman is very popular.
I am a knight. Okay, go ahead.
But also everyone knows Batman and Robin and how terrible that movie was.
It had one good line.
It's a horrible movie, and it's not because it doesn't have all the Batman iconography in it, because it does. It's got Batman and Robin and Batgirl and all these classic villains. It's got the Batmobile and a Batcopter.
It had a horrible Batmobile.
I didn't say it was a good Batmobile. I'm just saying that it's got all the things that when someone pitched it to the studio and said, we're going to have everything that Batman is important and Batman is going to be in there. But what didn't fit was they completely ignored the fact that Bruce Wayne is a tortured madman.
Yes.
Yes.
Instead, he was
He's not a fun-loving playboy?
No, he was a fun-loving playboy with a girlfriend, and he has girlfriends usually, but just like a casual, healthy relationship with his girlfriend. And he was playing like giant babysitter to these two young people living in his mansion with him. And they missed a lot of opportunities that would have made it felt really Batman.
It was Al McPherson, though.
Alfred was in danger of dying in that movie, and I never once felt like we were going to have a tragedy. And if you don't feel like there's going to be a tragedy with losing family members in a Batman movie, then you've misinterpreted Batman. So that would be my argument for why Batman and Robin is a bad adaptation of the Batman franchise, because they missed the opportunity to make
I will say real
characters.
quick, Richard Donner did say he was trying to create the fun-loving comic book effect on movie with that one, which is why it sucks so bad. Because you're right, it ripped out everything of Batman.
I'm just going to say this real fast, and before I say it, I'm going to admit to it. I played hooky in kindergarten because of the rerun of this show. It was a worse adaptation than Batman,
Okay.
than the one you just mentioned, because they moved part 2 to a different time. It's like, no, I'm in school. I can't miss this. But then again, I was in kindergarten. But looking back,
Playing hooky already. Wow.
You're the most rebel kindergartner ever.
Slipped out during nap time.
So animal crackers a fan.
but the 1960s version of Batman was laughable. And
Literally.
not literally, and not in a good way. Not a good adaptation. Go ahead.
However, I mean, it is, pulling from an era of the comics.
True. Very true.
So it is an adaptation. One of the things I find, for those of you who watch a lot of cartoons, you'll have probably seen a bunch of the Bruce Timm productions, not just the one that ran, which was The Adventures of Batman and Robin, I think it was. There were several incarnations throughout the years. However, the latest movies are the one I'm talking about, where he actually goes and takes different eras of comic books from Batman, because there's so many different eras.
Yep.
And you will interpret those into whatever cartoon he's creating. The latest one, not the latest one, but one of the latest ones being with the new Bat, where you have the new Batgirl and the new Batwoman and the new Batwing and all these guys coming in. So, Bruce does a really good job, actually, of interpreting some of this stuff and then pulling it in. Taking what is in the comic and giving it to you as a visual medium. He took the Frank Miller Batman and created that universe, which is really dark and has the female Robin and everything cool like that, and turned that into a comic book, which, for classic graphic novel people out there, Frank Miller's is this really crazy adaptation of Batman.
He's what they call angry Batman.
Exactly. He's old, bitter Bat who just kills this mutant dude, basically. But it's crazy like that, and it's I actually kind of enjoy it.
Would you say that adaptation succeeds because the adapter is actually a fan of the source material?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, I think that's why Bruce is so entrusted with the Batman universe, because he has this, and he's had from the start, from the original cartoon that ran on the WB or whatever. That was a beautiful adaptation of the 40s Batman. Then we got an incarnation that brought in Nightwing and brought in Batgirl and brought in, a new Robin, Timmy Drake. And that was an excellent adaptation of the later comic book era, which was the one that was starting to kind of grow and get crazy. And even in that Batman, he brought in the Frank Miller and some of the other stuff.
Yeah, I think I want to talk a little bit about the whole Hollywoodization issue that you guys have been talking about, and I think it works more than one way. Not only in making Batman darker, for example, but also oftentimes in whitewashing. Take, for example...
I'm coming right after you don't mention. I was going to say this one from the ugly, but go on. Go for it.
One of my favorite examples is Devil in a Blue Dress, the Walter Mosley classic noir, set beautifully. The movie was set beautifully in 1948, and it was very atmospheric, and it followed the plot pretty well, except that it whitewashed both Easy Rawlins and Daphne. They call it Devil in a Blue Dress because she was. She was evil. She was a thief. She was a murderer. I mean, she was not a good person. And yet, at the end of the novel, the end of the movie, we feel rather sorry for her. And Easy Rawlins, he offers to give back the money, for goodness sake. Not Easy Rawlins in the book, he wouldn't. So it's whitewashed for the Hollywood audience, I think.
There's a much later 80s version of that is a horrible movie as well.
I just wanted
I'm talking about the one with Denzel Washington in 1990. And I liked it. I liked the movie a lot.
Good
but
point. I guess it's a 90s version.
True to the book? Not very.
I think
in that terms.
It's important
in characters' terms.
State real fast that whitewashing has many meanings.
Yes.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah, you're whitewashing character in that you're making the characters less dark characters. But whitewashing also has a racial term as well.
Well, no doubt that was in there too.
Probably.
It was.
But just, I got confused for a second until I realized what you were saying. So I thought maybe I should just throw that in there real fast.
Okay.
Well, actually, I'm going to go down the racial term on that case.
Okay, there. I should have kept my mouth shut.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You kicked it off to me, and I thank you. And this story was originally told in ancient Egyptian mythology. It is one of the biggest stories about good versus evil in Egyptian mythology. It is the battle between Set and Horus, where Horus is about to avenge the death of Osiris. And as far as stories are concerned, this ranks up there with Greek mythology, with Norse mythology, you name it. It is up there. Well, we recently had a movie adaptation, first time I've seen of one, called The Gods of Egypt. I did not go see it. I refused to go see it because in the trailers I could see what they did. And one of the reasons why I did not go see it is the racial aspect. This is Egypt, people. This is Egypt. Caucasians did not become even into power in Egypt until the Ptolemies, which is much later, almost towards the end of Egyptian empire. But with the exception of one African American, I assume he's African American. It's definitely
the Nubians. There was a whole series of Nubian kings.
Yeah,
Nubian pharaohs.
But I'm talking about as far as actors.
You mean in the film?
Oh, you mean
in the film?
Gotcha.
In the film, at least
one.
I'm going to call.
Not white actor.
I'm going to use the other term. I'm going to use the other term. I do not mean to be political on this at all. I'm just going to use it because I'm not sure what his nation of birth is. One black actor played one god. Every single other actor on there, or actress that played the gods, were Caucasian. What? Egypt. So no, that's why I was waiting for the ugly part. But since we started this off, that one's
ugly.
down in my ugly.
That's pretty ugly.
We're in the heart of ugly. I'm going to jump right into
Go for it.
Pseudo ugly.
Pseudo ugly.
So this is one, and I said I was going to mention it earlier, and I'm sure if Kathleen were here, she'd be bringing it up too.
Yeah, we miss you, Kathleen.
We miss you. However, I'm going to throw it out there. Jurassic Park.
Go for it.
Jurassic Park is not the worst adaptation of a book that I've ever seen. However, it is a classic example of pulling like 3 scenes from the book and dumping the entire rest of the book when probably there were better parts of the book they could have pulled from and made an even better movie. And why is that? I'm talking about the aviary scene.
The aviary scene.
So, it is a wonderful part of the first novel. It is kind of alluded to in the third movie.
I don't speak of that movie.
However, a lot of what is in the first movie has been either so stripped out of the book that the book barely exists, or other things along that. And I think Steven Spielberg has talked about why he does this. He does it because he was making a movie that he wanted to make. He was also making a movie that was limited by technology and really overspent on the giant dinosaur. So he was limited in what he could do, which is why I think Hollywood and the Hollywoodization that we've talked about sometimes happens. Because Hollywood is making something that has a budget, that has certain technological limits, has certain actor requirements, has certain location requirements, and various things that can go into making a movie that don't necessarily lend itself well to telling the story of the book.
Either one of you two.
I was going to think about a movie. I wouldn't call this a bad adaptation, but it's certainly not one of the great adaptations. The Harry Potter movies.
I want to go with Harry Potter when you're done.
Yeah,
I figured we'd jump on Potter at some point.
Yeah, I was just, okay, the Harry Potter almost had the opposite problem. Namely, they were trying to stay too true to the book, and it had some major pacing issues because of that.
Well, that was pretty much what I was going to say, is that Harry Potter is a great example of both good adaptations and bad adaptations for different reasons. My favorite Harry Potter book is the third one. I like The Prisoner of Azkaban. It's my favorite because it's well told in its own little encapsulated whatever. And while it gave us some backstory with the previous generation of wizards that went to Hogwarts, it managed to keep its own lore within its own spine, between the covers of its own book, and didn't rely so heavily on the books before and after like the other ones in the series often did. And and I would say that the third movie is the one that departed the most dramatically from its source subject, if you don't count slicing it in half and turning it into 2 movies. But the director of the previous film, the previous 2 Harry Potter movies, Chris Columbus, stuck very, very true to the books, to the point that I was asleep before Christmas time because I was so bored because we were just hitting all the minutia. They did this scene, they did that scene, they did this scene, they did that scene. And yeah, he paid very close attention to everything that was said in the book. And good for him, he was trying to be true, but what he failed to do was translate it to screen well. The third movie was, oh gosh, what was the name of the director of that movie? I don't remember. I'm sorry. But props to him. But he didn't care about Harry Potter at all, actually. He just wanted to make a good movie because he'd seen the previous 2 movies, and they handed it to him, and he's like, okay, I'm going to let the actors who know what their characters are be their characters and be entertaining on the screen. And I know that I need to do this thing to make the audience entertained. I know I need to do this thing. And this part of the book, not as important. He specifically wanted to make Hogwarts into a character. That's why that's the movie where they introduced that big long bridge. They wanted scenes of Hogwarts to be recognizable throughout the rest of the franchise, because Hogwarts just felt like a place where things happened, as opposed to a living school that we were attending alongside our friends. And they took several opportunities to take them out of their wizard robes and made them look very foreign and very Harry Potter-ish, put them in street clothes so that all the kids watching the movie were like, oh, I feel closer to them, we all hang out together. Some people would say that made it a bad adaptation. I think that helped make it a good screen movie. Maybe not necessarily the best translation of the book directly, which was the previous 2 in the series, but you can see how sometimes that's not as important in this one little case, which is Harry Potter, where the further we strayed from it, the more interesting it was to the people in the seats.
I want to talk about a great American classic. It has been made into movies twice.
Okay.
neither of which came very close to what the essence of the book is, in my estimation. It may be that one day there will be a decent adaptation of it, but I sort of doubt it, because some books just don't really lend themselves to that sort of thing very well. The book I'm talking about is The Great Gatsby. And the first edition of it, starring Mia Farrow and Robert Redford, was all about, it seems to me, rich is good, poor is bad. The second one with Leo
DiCaprio.
and who was it?
His name was just on the tip of my tongue. The guy who played in the first trilogy of Spider-Man.
Tobey Maguire.
Thank you.
And the woman, the girl who played Daisy was
I don't remember.
Milligan,
I didn't see it,
Milligan.
actually.
Milligan, I think.
So not worth it. She was just
And this one,
I can't remember her first name though.
and this one was all about the Big Gatsby party. There was nothing else there to speak of. Even though the thing I think was rather better acted, it still didn't get anywhere near the heart of the story, which was the agonizing choices and the odd and impossible beliefs that everybody had. And so I think maybe it's just not possible to do that well on the screen.
Maybe. I've got three. Go ahead. I've got three examples, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was just thinking of another awful adaptation, and it's a good book, and please don't judge it by any movies that have been made out of it. It's called Starship Troopers, and the
Oh,
book.
I can tell you background on that one. Go ahead.
Yeah, but
How is that not a great movie?
okay.
Okay, that's going to be my fourth one. Go ahead.
Okay, maybe Dave can explain this better. But yeah, Starship Troopers, the movie, you might enjoy it as a popcorn movie, but it's just, not the book. And it's not just that it didn't do the book justice, it's that it's a different story.
That's right. And there's a reason for this.
Yeah, but maybe they just took this loose inspiration from the book, because the book is all about
No.
service and the point of service. And that is so not what the movie is about.
Would you like me to tell you what
Sure.
happened? As I understand it, the scriptwriters came up with a script about us going off and fighting bugs. And somebody goes, oh, hey, have you read Starship Troopers? It's close to the same thing. That's how the two things merged.
So someone just bought the rights to the title, basically.
Yes, basically.
That is a huge thing in Hollywood, actually.
So the other three I'm going to mention, I'm going to save one that was good and bad adaptation for last. Normally, I don't know about everyone around here, but usually you hear the saying that the movie is better than the TV show, and the book was always better than the movie. I agree with that 99%. Yes, there's an exception. In my opinion, for what it's worth, is there was one that is the TV show is better than the movie, and the movie is 100 times better than the book.
Can I guess what you're about to say?
Go for it.
MASH?
You got it. MASH. The book, I've read the books. The first book, let's just say, in my opinion, the author definitely did not end soon enough. I don't know if, I'm not going to disparage the guy, but I just really wonder what he was smoking when he was writing it. And I'm going to leave it there.
Probably quite a bit.
Quite a bit. The movie was good. I loved the movie. I loved the novel. It had the ideas of a novel in this. This is my second example. But it left out a lot that's in the book, and there's certain disparages. And this is a Harrison Ford movie. It's old. It's a Harrison Ford movie. Force 10 from Navarone. Really good movie. Really good book. Just that if you read the book and watch the movie, they're not completely different stories, but there's enough there that's a completely different story. And the final one I'm going to hit on is Dune. Dune is...
Sorry. I was waiting for when we pick up Dune.
I had to go there. Okay, the 1980s movie, the 1980s time period movie, did make me go read the book.
Was that the one with Patrick Stewart in it as a minor character?
Yes.
And that dog.
I don't remember the dog, but I do remember...
He was carrying the dog out to safety.
Okay, I don't remember that part, but anyway. However, honestly, Dune is a big, thick novel with a big mythology behind it. It is hard to do in an hour and a half, 2 hour long movie. So I do give it certain gratis. It did stick with the concept behind it.
To a point.
To a point. I was
We
trying to be
jump into
nice.
The Weirding Way.
Yes, yes.
So the Weirding Way, which is the most beautiful combat system ever devised in a fantasy world, maybe.
Maybe.
It's one of them. In the movie, ingloriously got taken down to a sound weapon.
Yes.
Where they just went, muddy, 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 muddy. Bam! Big explosion.
Yeah.
So, in it though, in the book, it is an entire martial art that has supernatural powers in it. It has all these beautiful moves. There is different kind of mystical powers that get pulled into it. And unfortunately, David Lynch said no. Actually, it might not have been David Lynch. It might have been the
Somebody said
producer
no.
dude.
Or the special effects budget?
No, that movie is all about the Italian producers.
Yes.
The story of Dune is fascinating. There was an entire other movie that was going to be made. That was going to be directed by this really crazy 70s director that was out there. Google the concept art. It will blow your mind. Geiger, who ended up doing the artwork for Aliens, was one of the concept artists for the first Dune.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then basically what happened is they realized that everybody was just so far afield of what Dune really was that they pulled it all away. They yanked it all back from these directors and guys who'd spent 2 years prepping this movie to be made and turned it over to David Lynch, who was then hounded by the producers and everything else who had him literally on a chain. And he hates this movie to this day because of it. And so Dune is its own little thing. But this is part of what I was going to jump in and talk about.
Okay, can I show a good adaptation? What Brad talked about, especially with martial arts, I think did a good job with it, is another adaptation of Dune. And that was done for Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah. Which is a miniseries.
Which is a miniseries. And the novel Dune belongs in that long of a...
It's hundreds of pages.
Of a work. Yes. So if you ever want to watch a movie that is pretty close to the book, Dune by Sci-Fi Channel.
Now, Children of Dune, which is an excellent... It was the
It was a good movie.
miniseries to Dune. Was good, but it's actually like 2 and 3 kind of mashed together, squished together.
Children of Dune and God Emperor of Dune, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
and then spun up and kind of thrown out. So it's not as great as an adaptation, but it does touch on all the big points.
And also they kind of glossed over a few things, like the brother and sister getting married.
Yeah.
Yes.
But here's what I was going to say about movies and the reason why. I think Hollywood movies sometimes don't work as well. Movies really lack the ability to do subtlety. They really lack the ability to kind of, let a subplot kind of go and kind of grow and evolve. It's really hard to shove that kind of stuff that is so rich and makes books so rich into a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
It's hard to show that growth, that, progression, things of that. And there are movies that kind of do it, but it is difficult to do, and I think it's one of the reasons why we always talk about movies gutting books.
Absolutely. I think that is a great point. And I have an example that I'd like to give you. It's from one of my all-time favorites. It's from James M. Cain, The Postman Always Rings Twice. This, too, has been made into 2 different versions of it. And they were both pretty good. I don't have any problems with them as to what they were. The typical movie of the old man, we don't want him anymore, get some stooge guy to come in and help you kill him, and then everything is good, except, of course, it's not going to be. But at any rate, what you lose are the brilliancy of someone like James M. Cain. Listen to this. These 2 are talking about getting rid of the old man. Who's going to know if it's all right or not but you and me? You and me. That's it, Frank. That's all that matters, isn't it? Not you and me in the road or anything else, but you and me. You must be a hellcat, though. You couldn't make me feel like this if you weren't. That's what we're going to do. Kiss me, Frank. on the mouth. I kissed her. Her eyes were shining up at me like 2 blue stars. It was like being in church.
Yeah.
It can't be any more unlike being in church, folks. I mean, they're plotting to kill the old man.
Yeah.
And yet, you get swept away in that notion of his, that odd transposition of words that is extraordinary. It gives a feeling, at least it did to me, that I could never get from a movie.
Can I talk about the reverse? We've been talking about movie adaptations of books, but now especially they also make book adaptations of movies. And
Before you do
Yeah.
that, let me, because
Go ahead.
I love where you're going. Please.
okay,
I mentioned at the top of the show the article by The Telegraph about 22 greatest TV adaptations. I'm just going to read these to you, and then I'm going to turn it
Yeah.
over to you. Roots from 1977. This one I've never seen before, but A Very British Coup back in 1988. A lot of these you'll notice are British, by the way.
Telegraph.
They do it well.
They do. Red Riding from 2009.
Those are grim.
Alice in Wonderland, 1966.
okay.
Um,
Haven't seen that version.
Parade's End, 2012. Daniel Deronda, 2002. Fortunes of War, 1987. There's one of my favorites is coming up eventually here. The Box of Delights, 1984.
Okay, I haven't heard of most of these, but you know.
Many of them I haven't. This one is not the one I was going to talk about as being one of my favorites, but this is a darn good one that did it. Lonesome Dove, 1989. Another good one, 1984, which was filmed in 1953. Well, 1984. Well, it's.
It just sounded like you were saying 2 years.
I know. I had to because
The movie 1984, made in 1950, whatever.
Right. Bleak House, made in 2005. Wolf Hall, which was filmed in 2015. House of Cards. Yes, the TV series is on Netflix. Was first made on based on a British movie, a British TV series that was based on a book. That was filmed in 1990. The History Man, 1981. The Jewel in the Crown, 1984.
That's about India. It's good.
Well, finally, someone who knows the thing that's being talked about.
Game of Thrones, 2011 to present. War and Peace. They
Okay,
actually made
I would
this.
put a star next to Game of Thrones.
I thought so too. I haven't watched it. or
There
read
is
them
a
all.
lot that is really awesome, but they have merged storylines, dropped storylines, and other things like that.
War and Peace, 2016. This one I applaud on its accuracy to the book. I, Claudius, which is based on I, Claudius and Claudius the God by Robert Graves. Filmed 1976 and had Derek
Jacoby.
Thank you. I mispronounce his last name all the time. Fantastic acting in it. And also, too, that's also where you can see Patrick Stewart with hair. Just let you know if you ever want to look it up. I don't know if this was his real hair or not, but
I
next
saw
one.
Patrick Stewart with hair. Didn't he have it in that one episode of Next Gen where he became a child?
That wasn't it.
I'm talking about the actor himself. Okay.
I know, it was a joke.
The Forsyte Saga, 1967. This one, I think, is my number one, though this is only number 3 on the British. Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. By John Le Carre. Pride and Prejudice, 1995.
Lots of good Pride and Prejudice adaptations.
And the
that's pretty
final
easy.
one, and I have not seen this one, Brideshead Revisited, 1981. Oh, back to you. The books of TV.
Do you want to talk about the
Yeah.
I'm going somewhere else.
Okay, yeah, nowadays it's very popular to do novelizations of popular movies. And there are some good things about it, and I've read some ones that are decent. I've never read one that was just brilliant, but I've read some ones that are decent. But I've also read one recently that is just awful, and it's fascinating to read a really bad novel based on a really good screenplay. And can you guess which one I'm talking about?
I can, because you've actually mentioned it previously on the show.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that's a novel that if you read it first might actually ruin the movie for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because
That's also a book that was rushed.
well, yeah,
Yes.
but again, the dialogue's really good, and it's again it's pretty much exactly like, except for a few little lines, which gives you an fascinating insight into ad libs by actors. Because other than that, it is exactly the same text as the movie.
Or
They
even
just-
rewrites of the script.
Or yeah, but then they just add a few scenes that were probably cut from the movie.
Surprising recommendation of a novel that was written from a film. If you guys want to pick up the Tron novelization, it's actually pretty decent.
Okay.
Alien is good too.
I like it.
Dracula.
Well, I was going to jump on to, probably some of the greatest taking of said text and turning it into plays and movies and stuff like that. And that would be the wonderful Shakespeare.
Yes.
I want to go visit the bar for a while.
The Shakespeare, I think one of the reasons why it does so well at an adaptation is because you don't have to do anything. The script is literally right there for you. There are some wonderful Romeo and Juliets. There are some wonderful Midsummer Night's Dream. Even The Tempest, the latest one of The Tempest, ended up being a really good adaptation of it. There are definitely Shakespeare that you can go to that you're going to look at it and you're going to see it as an exact copy of what's there, and that can be awesome.
Just for point of clarification, at what point does it not? It's not. At what point does it become an adaptation, as opposed to just performing the play?
Okay, so the play generally takes place all in one spot. So Macbeth is a really good example, or actually Hamlet's a really good example because Hamlet takes place within solely the castle. However, if you've seen Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet, which is set in the Austrian kind of I guess it's pre-World War One-ish, somewhere in there. That's a great adaptation because he's changed a lot, but the story of Hamlet is still the same.
Would you call The Lion King a good adaptation of Hamlet?
Yes, actually. It probably loses a little of the dialogue, but...
Lost in translation into African land
exactly.
mammals.
However, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, which is an incredibly stylized version of that, I actually love. And the reason I love it is because it's a very modern take on it, yet all the guns are called swords and stuff like that, which is very highly amusing. But it does stick to the structure and story of Romeo and Juliet, which, is good. And it makes it, that kind of, bringing it up to a modern day. For anyone who's not seen it, it's Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, so check it out. But that would be a true adaptation.
Another good adaptation. I'm going to talk about the same play, two different performances in movie form. An adaptation one is Joss Whedon's version of Much Ado About Nothing.
Yes.
Which technically is all filmed in one location. It was his backyard.
Yep.
Yeah.
And his house.
Yes.
House.
And I thought it did a
Over a
really good
weekend.
job.
And not seen any more prominently than the police station in his basement.
Yes. However, while I do like Nathan Fillion as an actor, he is beat out by the other version of this movie, in which Michael Keaton plays the same role and does it hilariously at even higher levels. But I want to mention this movie once again. It's Much Ado About Nothing. Michael Keaton was a minor character. Denzel Washington.
Dogberry.
Huh?
Dogberry is the name.
Of the sheriff.
Thank you. I couldn't think of the name.
You're just like,
I
why don't these
could-
people know?
Yeah, sorry. Denzel Washington, before this movie, was a good actor. After.
After this movie, he wasn't.
No. After this movie. In this movie are a bunch of Shakespearean actors. I don't think Denzel Washington was a Shakespearean actor. Kenneth Branagh is there. His wife at the time, Emma Thompson, was in it. And others. And watching the movie, you can watch his acting evolve from this really good level to outstanding level. Watch it. You'll be able to see it actually happen.
I gotta watch it just for that.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, and though it's not written down, remember I am an ass. Oh, right.
Well, there were two movies that I read. I mean, the books I read. I didn't read
You can read a movie.
I can, but I didn't. No. There were two books that I read straight through without stopping. I mean, I would go literally and make myself a sandwich while I was still reading. And I read them straight through. One was Rosemary's Baby. I read
Oh, that's good.
because it was so scary. And the other was Deliverance, James Dickey, because it was so exciting.
That
And
movie bothers
couple.
me.
so what grabbed me about them were those two things. When I watched the movie of each one, and I thought both of the movies were fairly decent, but the pacing when I read it was with me.
Uh-huh.
I did it. I raced through those. Whereas if you watch a movie, you have to go with somebody else's pacing. You have to have whatever the director, the actors, that's the rate that you have to go at. And that, I think, is a great stumbling block, at least for, and one of the reasons why I think many people prefer the books to the movies, because the pacing is mine, it's not yours, with a book.
Very true.
Well, it's partially yours. The author does have something to do with pacing in the book.
But it does have a lot more to do.
Yeah.
The director does have a lot more to it. And especially, to borrow from Alfred Hitchcock, the reason why he always filmed things the way he did was in order to take power away from this person, and that was the editor. They've also got the power. So we've talked about the good, we've talked about the bad, we've talked about some uglies. Have we hit all of your worst case scenarios? And what makes the movie ugly?
Real quick, we're going to be talking about the worst, and we're here at the end, so let's talk about the worst.
Yes.
The very worst. The worst adaptations in the history of cinema are video game movies.
Ah.
Yes.
Oh, come on now. Doom was great.
Oh, let me tell you how great Doom was. Yeah, so you have Doom, classic, horrible one.
That was terrible.
Can we go to Super Mario Brothers?
Oh, boy.
Oh,
Talk about missing the mark.
The giant steaming pile that was Super Mario Brothers.
Lance Henriksen was in that. He actually met his wife on the set of that
Okay.
film. So if
Good to
anything
know.
good came of it, he had a couple happy years.
You know,
of marriage.
the Hitman. Oh, jeez, I can't even think of them all
No.
now.
I saw at least one of the final,
Dragons.
Prince of Persia.
Dungeons and Dragons, Prince of Persia.
at least one of the Final Fantasy movies wasn't terrible. I don't know
Tomb
how it
Raider,
would compare to the book.
There's no book.
Resident
There
I
aren't
mean-
books of Final Fantasy.
Silent Hill.
Silent Hill.
I
love
mean,
the
we could
Silent
just
Hill
say we
movie.
could do an entire show about the
Oh.
horrible adaptations of video games into movies.
Well, the Resident Evil franchise.
Exactly. So
In case you're curious, Alice isn't in the games. But
Yeah.
she's all the movies are about.
exactly, and I think here's the reason why. Because at that point, Hollywood is doing nothing more than buying a title.
Yep.
Brand recognition.
Hollywood is buying a title. They're not taking any of the story. They're not taking any of the things that make it great. They're not taking any of the story. I think this is why Halo has yet to be made into a movie.
It was so close.
It was so close.
We can thank the world can thank Halo for District 9 because District 9
Yes.
is the spiritual brother to the Halo franchise. You can see the prawn characters. Those models were going to end up being the elite soldiers from Halo, but they dropped that project and translated it over to District 9, which is probably a better movie than the Halo movie would have been. Because it's a fantastic
Exactly.
movie, and I'm not going to guess the Halo movie would have been that fantastic.
But yeah.
So is it because they're missing the mark and just not caring about
I'm
the video
gonna.
game?
Are you
Yeah,
finished
go,
the
go.
idea?
I was really just ranting on Hollywood stripping out everything.
Well, I'm gonna use a director as a straw man here. One Yui Bowl.
No.
Fantastic for not understanding
Blood Rain.
what the video game movie needs to be. Not understanding that the part of the video game that's going to be a movie is not the part that's the gameplay. It's the part that's the plot. Because there are plots in movies. Blood Rain is a good example.
You mean
that-
plots in video games too?
Yes.
Yeah.
I said it wrong. The Blood Rain is about a half vampire joining a vampire witch cult and killing Nazis, which is great. But for whatever, I don't understand why, but the Blood Rain movie was not about that.
No.
It was about a half vampire woman named Rain. That is true. But he rewrote it. I don't understand. The idea is instead of going into that while I try to figure out exactly what the Blood Rain movie was.
Her mind is exploding here. Go
House
ahead.
of the Dead. He made the House of the Dead movie, and he included, I kid you not, game over screens in that film.
Yes.
That's not what you put in a movie adaptation of a video game.
No.
When we think back on House of the Dead, we don't think, oh, I loved it when I died. I like the part where I failed and had to start over. But he literally did put in the exact same graphics of a game over screen when a guy gets killed in that film. No, the part that you care about is seeing the characters that you play as in the arcade game, because it is an arcade game. They included kind of a nod to them at the end, but other than that, the only thing that was House of the Dead in House of the Dead was that there were zombies in it, and a guy died in the same way. It was completely missing the mark of what you need to adapt from the source material to make something both true to it and entertaining. There are boss fights in his movies, like literally they queue up for a boss fight and start boss music, and then when they're done they do like a victory pose. He's trying to emulate what it feels like to play a game, but you play a game for that. You need to be making a movie that feels like watching a movie instead of wasting your time and money.
Yeah, much in the same way that Doom did the first-person vision.
Yes, it's so
of running through
bad.
the halls and shooting stuff.
Oh, it's wonderfully bad.
Oh, so wonderful. However, we are starting to change. Hollywood is starting to understand that maybe there was a plot in the video game, and that's something good to grab. So if you're listening, Hollywood, please do. But anyway, if you're listening, please make the Knights of the Old Republic. Disney, I'm talking to you.
Got it.
You're putting out a Star Wars movie every year, and I would love to see Revan as a character kicking butt in the Old Republic. And if you want to make her a woman like that storyline, that was awesome.
Well, you just want that so that the Knights of the Old Republic isn't written out of canon.
Heck yeah. Yeah, the Knights of the Old Republic's too awesome to write out of canon.
No,
Plus, it was
the diff-
thousands of years ago, so it's cool to keep it as canon. It's all good.
I think the difference is that people who grew up on stuff like video games and comic books are starting to become the people who are making these films.
Yes.
Now, question: as someone that's not into video games much, have there been any good movies that happen to have a video game title that aren't? If you hadn't played the video game, it might have been a good movie on its own.
Oh, I take
War
such
games?
joy in the
What?
bad ones. I don't know
War
if I can
games?
think of a good one.
No.
No.
The simple answer to that question is no. There are
I'm-
such horrible video game adaptations
I'm
that it really
sure
hasn't
there's a
become.
good one.
I'll say this. Listeners, if you can think of one, if you can think of a good
video
answer
game
for
movie.
Melanie's question, please post a comment on the Right Pack page, the Right Pack Radio page on Facebook. And nope, not? All right. And on
I
that,
thought I had one, but I don't.
the timer is rung, and we are going to end this session. But I think what Jennifer said a moment ago, describing with video games, applies to the books and the bad adaptations. Sometimes what's written for the movies and done for the movies leaves out the heart, the spirit, and the guts of what was intended in the books. And for that, have a great week writing, and tune in next week for yet another interesting story or an interesting topic in the writing industry. The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her. Right Pack Radio would like to thank STL Books for allowing us to record in their office. STL Books is a online bookstore specializing in new and used high-quality literature, children's books, and books written by or about St. Louis. Please visit them online at www.stlbooks.com or find their store on the Amazon.com website.